In taking a look back at films of 2023 that I did not get to review upon original release, we've got three movies from Apple TV Plus that I didn't get to, and some with some pretty big names too. Let's talk about Sharper, Flora and Son, and Fingernails. Hey guys, Dan here. This is Dan Reviews It. Welcome to my movie reviews for three recent Apple TV Plus films. These all came out in 2023 and just kind of missed me upon original release. We've got Sharper, Flora and Son, and Fingernails. We're just going to do them in the order in which they were released. But before I do that, let me welcome you into Dan Reviews It. Thank you for finding this video. We do movie and TV reviews here on the channel, and just about every day something new goes up, whether it's movie or TV related. Sometimes you get two in a day, but in any event, please consider subscribing, hit that like button, comment below. All that stuff, of course, helps the channel out. And we are looking through the 2023 wrap up. I know we're well into the following year, but there's always movies that have fallen by the wayside for one reason or another. So as I was looking back at the list of 2023 films I wanted to tackle, there were three from Apple that I didn't get to do yet. And these will not be, your full length, 8-9 minute reviews. We're probably just going to talk about each one, maybe 4 minutes or something, 5 minutes, give you a little overview, a few thoughts, and then we'll move on to the next one, just because these are, slightly older films. But all of these are available, of course, like I said, on Apple TV Plus, so you can check them out now. Why don't we start with Sharper? This is the first one that came out, and this one boasts a pretty big cast. Julianne Moore, Sebastian Stan, John Lithgow, Justice Smith, all a part of this one. And this is a movie that I don't want to even really talk about plot-wise too much, because it's one of those movies like Crash where, there's a lot of different stories going on, and eventually they sort of all converge. So as a result of that sort of storytelling, the film is presented in non-linear ways, through kind of, vignettes or different acts or whatever, and each one focuses on different characters, although, some characters, like I said, will kind of go between each vignette or whatever. So we'll see a few of the same character in different places. But I don't really want to even say more than that, because I think it would be a disservice to you as a viewer if you knew too much going in, and what some of the twists are and what some of the relationships are in this movie. So look, as a result, a movie like this is tough to pull off, right? There's certainly some mystery elements to it, because you're wondering as we go along, okay, we see this first scene, or the first act, or whatever you want to call it, and all right, we see this, okay, and then it ends, and we go to this other thing with completely different people, and you're like, okay, well, what does one have to do with the other? And so it's a tricky balancing act that I think some movies pull off pretty well, others not so much. There was that whole host of sort of rom-coms in this vein back in the late 2000s, early 2010s, maybe, like He's Just Not That Into You and New Year's Eve. But we see, shades of the characters being in other characters' lives, etc. But it's not till the very end that, we all converge. Sometimes that can work great. I think Crash did it pretty well. I know that gets a lot of crap for winning Best Picture. Maybe it didn't deserve it. But I do think that's a movie that does it pretty well. This one is sort of in between those two. I think it takes a fair amount of swings that don't necessarily hit. But I think the basic premise is intriguing. And all of these characters are intriguing enough as well. Some of them are less likable than others. But when you throw in these, kind of higher tier actors like a Julianne Moore or a John Lithgow, and even up and coming Justice Smith, I just talked about him in another recent video. He's got charisma as well. And so you really do want to kind of follow these characters, but where it's all headed, I don't know if the payoff was quite worth it. But I will say that I don't think this movie necessarily bites off more than it can chew with the concept. I think it does okay with how it's presented. And certainly, like I said, it's acted well. I'm just not sure that it's done as well as we've seen it in other places with the converging storylines. And also the different time jumps, because it's non-linear and there's no real description of, okay, this was, a week before the scene you just watched, or this was 2 months later, or whatever. the viewer has to kind of fill in those blanks, and I'm not sure that that is the best way to go either. It may have been tipping its hand too much if it presented it the other way, but I think it leads to some confusion presented the way that it is. So I will leave Sharper with a B minus. All right, like I said, we're just going to move through these pretty quickly. So let's move now to the next one, Flora and Son. This was directed by John Carney, and his bread and butter is these realistic movie music like convergences. He did Once, he did Sing Street, which I just watched again a few weeks ago, and that's as wonderful as ever. He did Begin Again. So, really all of his movies, at least those three, I don't know if he's done movies outside the music realm, but involve, original music. They involve down-to-earth characters. And so in this one, Flora and Son, we see single mom Flora, who is played by Eve Hewson, who is the daughter of Paul Hewson, who is better known as Bono. So there's obviously, a little bit of a music connection there, certainly. But she does not know what to do with her rebellious teenage son, Max, who is played by Oren Kinlan. And, he's just constantly in trouble. So she tries to keep him out of trouble by giving him an acoustic guitar. And they try to make some music together. And he's trying to do his own thing and wants nothing to do with his mom. But, she's trying to be persuasive and whatever. So much in the John Carney tradition, this is about, like I said, real people, struggling musicians, certainly. And this one, I don't know, it might be the most unrealistic of all four of them. And I think the characters have too many rough edges to necessarily get behind. I feel like in those other movies I mentioned, most of the characters, at least the musicians of the film, are a little more likable. You kind of feel for their struggle. And I think some people can certainly relate to Flora, but I think, her and Max are both kind of characters that are not either as fleshed out or well-rounded, I guess, as they could be, and that sort of makes them a little bit unlikable. And Max is just kind of a bratty kid, teenagers are going to be like that, but, as a single mother, she's sort of bailing him out of things that maybe she should, let him learn from his mistakes or whatever, but then the movie doesn't happen. So, there's a little bit of character loss there, but, the original songs are okay. They're not quite as good, I think, as any of the other movies. But look, you're talking about some of the best of the music movie genre. I don't know what you'd call it, because they're not necessarily musicals. I mean, I guess they sort of are, but people aren't busting out into song randomly. They're actual musicians playing the songs. So I don't know if you call it musicals, but Once, I mean, that is one of the top of the genre. That's an A. Sing Street, I personally have a soft spot for. I give that one an A plus. And Begin Again, sort of, in the B plus or B range. That's where this one falls. It's not quite as good as the tops. Eve Hewson is an okay actress. She's a decent enough singer, and I love U2, one of my all-time favorite bands. So I get the love for Bono and all of that. But his daughter, I've never really heard of her before this movie. But when I saw that last name, I was like, Hewson. It's, it takes place in Ireland, like a lot of John Carney's movies do. So I looked it up, and sure enough, yeah, she's got that the nepotism thing there, which is fine, if you've got talent. I'm not positive yet that she does in this genre. I'm not sure if she's going to have a career ahead of her in movies. And I do wish the songs were a little bit better. But at the same time, we're talking about, some untapped musical talent. These are amateurs, so do we really expect them to write, the next great American song? No, probably not. Having the songs be a little maybe rougher around the edges, maybe works for the characters. I don't know. But in terms of the film, this is definitely the best of the three that I'm going to review today. And I leave Flora and Son with a B. Like I said, definitely more on the Begin Again tip in terms of John Carney movies. Definitely not up to the par with Once and Sing Street, but watchable nonetheless, for sure. All right, and then we get to Fingernails last. This is a sci-fi romantic drama film. A lot of things going on here, and it stars Jessie Buckley, Riz Ahmed, who starred in another one of my A-plus films from a few years ago, The Sound of Metal, which he was nominated for an Oscar. Kate Blanchett is here. Luke Wilson. I'm sorry. Kate Blanchett is not in it. She's one of the producers. But Luke Wilson and Jeremy Allen White, very popular right now with The Bear. They are all a part of this movie. And this basically follows the Jessie Buckley character. She starts working at this institute that tests whether the love between two people of a couple are whether that love is real. And the way they do that is by basically ripping your fingernail off and sort of analyzing that. It's a little bit Black Mirror-y in its execution. And it also reminds me of this movie from a couple of years ago. I think this was a Hulu film that was more of a sci-fi, a little bit of a horror movie, but it was called Clock, where, the biological clock was a little bit different than the way we think about it. It was less of a metaphor and more of a real, item. And so this reminds me a little bit of that, where, they're sort of using science to dictate, whether or not somebody is, in this case, compatible with their mate. And so Jessie Buckley, she's definitely up and coming. We've seen her in quite a few things so far. Riz Ahmed, of course, his star is rising. So these maybe are not going to be your biggest stars, but I think for a movie like this, they definitely work. Jeremy Allen White, obviously a star on the rise as well. So everybody's kind of working here with what they have. But the main problem with this film is not really in the premise. The premise is kind of cool, like I said, kind of Black Mirror-y. The acting is fine. It's in the execution. This falls down the whole of becoming more about the specific relationship between Jessie Buckley and her mate, as opposed to let's find out about this fingernail thing and how it's affecting people really around the world, not just this one particular couple. I kind of wanted to know a little bit more about where that technology was going to leave everybody, not just, oh, this woman works here, and so she's kind of playing around with the limits of the fingernail procedure and whatever, and trying to see if her and her mate are compatible, or is she more compatible with the guy she's working for, Riz Ahmed. So there's a little bit too much of fluff in this movie, as opposed to really digging into, I feel like if this were a Black Mirror episode, they would really get to the crux of okay, how is this affecting everybody, and what exactly is the meaning of it, and how it figures out the compatibility. Maybe some of that stuff doesn't matter for what they were going for, but as a result, this kind of fell a little flatter for me with regards of execution. But I like the concept, certainly. I think it's interesting. And just the love triangle thing was a little bit routine for me. I sort of expected a little bit more based on the concept that I didn't quite get in this one. So this is the least of my three today. I leave Fingernails with a C. So none of these inherently, terrible, but no home runs here either. A lot sort of just in the middle of the road or above average for me. But 3 to check out if you're interested on Apple TV Plus now. Thank you so much for watching Dan Reviews It. We're going to keep doing these 2023 wrap-up videos probably for the next couple of months, and then eventually I will do a best and worst of the year in film. But for now, that's 3 more down for the year, and you can check those out now on Apple Plus. All right, thank you for watching Dan Reviews It. We'll see you next time. Bye.